Justin Fields. And it feels like some of the naysayers, not Chris Sims, but some of the naysayers are even starting to come around. If I'm not mistaken, Dan Orlovsky is now sitting there posting positive footage of Justin Fields, complimenting him on some of his throws, and like, no, not so fast, sir. You are not going to be. No, you were already bounced from this wedding for being a crasher. Now you're trying to show back up, like, yeah, I should be. No, you should not be here. We do not want you here. And by the way, RG3 kind of called him out, pointing out, because Orlovsky was, making his observations, and then he was corrected by RG3, and then Orlovsky tried to double down, and RG3 was not having any of it. Like, no, you're fine. Like, listen, sir, he sunned him, I think, at some point. But here's the thing. What we wanted to see out of Justin Fields this past week is pretty much what we got. Made some nice throws, felt some pressure, made some adjustments. Now there's some work in progress things. And when you're comparing him to Aaron Rodgers, which is one of the things Dan Orlovsky was doing, you're like, yeah, that's a 15-year veteran who's going to the Hall of Fame. Like, I can't expect Justin Fields to just completely forget everything that happened last season and then be a polished quarterback in week 1 of the NFL preseason. It just is not going to happen. But I think what we saw is indicative of somebody who's put in a lot of work during the offseason, and there are a lot of things to be encouraged about. I can't wait to talk about it. So, Sammy, let's go ahead and start the show.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Adam Ray.
Trying to cut it back. Justin Fields making magic happen. There goes Fields. Touchdown.
The sickest Chicago Bears and fantasy football podcast. Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
It is Tuesday night, and you know what that means, and it's time for Take It to the Rank. 1 preseason game already in the book. So much to get into. So why don't we bring in our co-host, who is joining us every Tuesday night, Carmen Vitali, of the managing editor of the Draft Network. Thank you so much for being here, and you're still in Tampa, it looks like.
I am still in Tampa. I'm leaving tonight. I'm leaving after this podcast, but obviously have a lot of Bear stuff to still talk about, even though I've been in the Bucks bubble again for the last week.
That's all right. I was hoping when you appeared that we would see the Sears Tower behind you, and we're still calling it that. That's okay.
For sure. I refuse to acknowledge Willis Tower as a thing.
Yes. I had forgotten. That was another thing too. It was like, I can't even remember what it was supposed to be. I don't know what would you do? Like, I don't even, Staples Center in Los Angeles is now something else. And it's like, I refuse.
Oh yeah. Isn't it like crypto.com arena or something?
That's
like
it.
That?
Yeah. You're good. Look at you. You're a corporate sellout. You know all these things. The Murph, Soldier Field.
I did spend about a year in sponsorships though. Worst year ever. It was actually I facilitated the PNC partnership with the Bears. Fun fact.
Look at you and PNC. When you're all over Hallis Hall, you'll see the PNC and all that stuff. And so Good job. Very nice.
Thank you. And
speaking of good jobs, obviously the Bears victorious over the Kansas City Chiefs as we expected. What were your impressions of it? What are your takeaways from that game? I talked a little bit about Justin Fields, but overall, how are you feeling about the Bears' progress in week 1 of the preseason?
I mean, yeah, for having an offensive line rotation throughout the entire game, and still not knowing who their starters are or who's going to play what position, I thought that the offense looked good for that matter. And I really just loved kind of like the concepts that you were seeing, the formations, the personnel that was going out there. It just looked it looked very different than what it has looked, before. And it looks like it plays to Justin Fields' strengths as far as, just all of the scheme and all that kind of stuff. And then the defense, I was very encouraged about, especially one Jaquan Brisker.
Oh, gosh.
By Jaquan Brisker.
He was amazing. Like, he already looks like a seasoned professional out there. And I don't want to get too hyped up over one preseason game, but this is indicative of what we've seen during the training camp and all the practices, is that this guy knows how to play football. And there was no doubt about that on Saturday.
I think that was the most encouraging part, was that, like, you saw him making plays in practice day in and day out, but then to see that translate to a game, and then he forces a 3-and-out basically by himself. Like, it was the amount of awareness that he has and just how crucial that safety spot is in this Eberflus defense. It warmed my heart. That's all.
Well, and probably one of the biggest plays, and it showed like the dichotomy of the refereeing situation in the NFL, is that Jaquan Brisker, who I think he missed one of the practices this week, and I was concerned because he has that shoulder injury. He did everything humanly possible to avoid hitting Chad Henne. Like Chad Henne was sliding, and he did the right. He did not, Nagy. I don't want to say under Nagy they would have lit him up, but he has the football IQ to get out of the way. Not that it mattered, because apparently it's not a penalty anymore to hit your quarterback when he's sliding. Because that's the only other impression I got from this game is that, it doesn't matter. Like it's. I'm sorry, Carmen. I'm going to give you an opportunity to talk about this, but I got to say one thing. And this is what happened. So somebody, I think it was Illwell who posted this, that somebody said something to the referee, like, "Hey, like what's going on?" And he's like, he got hit in the shoulder. And you're like, okay, that might or might not be true, but he was sliding. You're not supposed to hit him when he's sliding in the shoulder, in the leg, in the head. All of it is illegal. I hope at some point, and I want to see, like, I don't know, it's the first preseason game. This is the first time that Matt Eberflus has been in control of calling challenges and timeouts. Next time, go get run from the game. Like, I want to see somebody step up and not allow that stuff to go on anymore.
Yeah, I mean, and here's the thing. It's like, I feel like we're seeing this more and more with these mobile quarterbacks too, where referees are essentially then treating them as runners. Yeah. But I'm like, in that instance, though, that was not a designed run. Justin Fields was not a runner in that position. He was a quarterback, and he was sliding. And, like, you need to be able to, I don't know, like, keep that in mind. And I don't know. I was very, because shoulder or not, you can't get hit, and you're supposed to protect the quarterback, and all of these rules are in place to protect the quarterback. Just because these guys can run doesn't mean that they shouldn't be afforded the same penalties or the same safety, essentially.
Yeah.
The rest of these guys.
No, 100%. And you think about Cam Newton never got the calls. We don't see Lamar Jackson get any of the calls.
Correct.
I think, I know the Bills fans kind of say that Josh Allen doesn't, and I'm like, okay, I'll take your word for it. I haven't noticed it as much with him, but yeah, I mean, like, if you're a pocket passer like Kirk Cousins, you cannot breathe on him. But if you have some sort of, and not that Kirk, but if you have some sort of athletic ability, they just are like, you're a football player. And it wasn't a designed run. By the way, I got in trouble on Twitter. We're not in trouble, but I made a mistake.
No.
Well, you know what happened was I saw a play that for whatever reason, I thought it was a designed run. And I posted the video, mostly because I wanted to make a Matt Nagy joke. And then I was like, oh, wait, that wasn't a designed run. Like, damn it. Whatever. I made a mistake. I deleted it. I apologized. I moved on. But I did love a couple of the throws that Justin made to Tajay Sharp.
Yes.
Like that. Everybody was talking about the catch. And I'm like, that throw was a dime.
An absolute dime. To put that in the position where Tajay could get that. I mean, like, it was the outside shoulder. It was out of the way of where a defender could have gotten it. Like, and that's the goal of a quarterback, is to place this ball. And that's why, I mean, watching Tom Brady all these years, like, that's what I kind of marveled over, was that he throws and I remember Todd Bowles saying this about him, actually, that he throws the best incompletions, because even if it goes incomplete, it's not available for the defender. It is not something that a defender can access. It was placed somewhere that only that receiver is going to be able to get it. And that is, like, to have that power, to have that control and that accuracy is, that's what you love to see out of Justin Fields, especially when everyone talks about, it's his athletic ability that kind of gives him that X factor, yada, yada, yada. Well, no, he's a really good passer too.
Yeah. That is one of the things that's the most incredible about what he does, is that a lot of people will be, they try to label him as a running quarterback. And I always have to make this distinction to people, like, no. He's a pocket passer who also has the ability to run very fast if he needs to. It's a weapon that's available to him. It's kind of like being a minivan that can carry 8 people, but can also do 0 to 60 in 4 seconds. Like, I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. He's built different.
What an analogy, man.
I'm trying to think of one. I don't know. They're just always, and sometimes where the misconceptions come from, but you're like, no. Like this guy can throw dimes. Go back and watch the game against Clemson. Again, if that's the only college football you're ever going to watch, you should have walked out of that game thinking he was the best quarterback in the draft. So it's good to see him get a little bit of, praise from around the league. Not Chris Sims, though, who was like, the throw to Darnell Mooney was underthrown. You're like, yeah, so number one, he doesn't get killed. And number two, it doesn't get intercepted. Something you couldn't. Oh, I'm sorry. That's one of your Bucks guys. I don't mean to roast Chris Sims.
No, that was before me. That was pre me. So I don't have any loyalty there. There was no love lost either, because some of the stuff that I swear he got, No.
Yeah. Okay. As long as pre Carmen, and it's fine. I just want to make sure. I don't want to insult any Buccaneers player. Where does Rondé Barber fall? No, I'm kidding.
Oh, I got to see him this week. He's one of my favorites in the entire world.
He's a nice person.
No, he's the best person, and he's absolutely wonderful, and he's hysterical. He connects with everybody. He's so friendly. He's so visible here in Tampa. He was doing the color commentary, and I saw all these people on Twitter for the preseason game just being like, put Rondé in the booth every single week. Everyone loves him here, and for good reason. He does amazing things for the community too, as far as charity events and all that kind of stuff. So he's honestly one of my favorites, and he's very visible at Bucks practice. He's there almost, I think, once a week is what he was telling me he was going. So yeah, I got to catch up with him this last week, which was really awesome, because he's just one of my favorites. And I was there when he went into the Ring of Honor, and
there you go.
Just couldn't be happier for the guy.
He is him and his and I hate to say it, that Tiki is also he's been very nice to me. I'm not going to endorse every decision he's ever made in his life, but he's been very nice, and they're good people. But I want to go back to what you were saying, though, about the defense and the encouraging signs, and Brisker looked great, and they did well without having Roquan Smith. And this saga continues to unfold with so many layers. Why don't we pull up a tweet that Ian Rappaport had this week, where he said Bears coach Matt Eberflus said that Roquan Smith, who is still seeking a new contract and is asked to be traded, will travel to Seattle for their preseason game. He won't play. Eberflus described him as engaged. I will say too, according to reports, he's not been fined yet. I think that was Tom Pelissaro who reported that he has not been fined yet, but still there is somebody out there making fake phone calls to teams asking hey, do you want to make a trade for Roquan Smith? And unauthorized. I think the Packers are tampering if the NFL wants to come down on them. Look into the Packers. I'm almost positive that they're tampering. What do you make of what is happening with the Roquan situation? I know that we've both been very positive about it, very it's gonna work out. Have your feelings changed at all?
Honestly, no, just because being in the building kind of affords me a really good perspective, from my years with the Bucks, for just stuff like this in general, because it's made a big, and it is a big deal. Don't get me wrong. This is the Bear, especially in Chicago, because he's one of the best players on the Bears. He's the crux of that defense in so many ways. But when you're in the bubble and when you're in the building, it doesn't seem like it's as big of a deal, if that makes sense. He's in meetings, he's doing things they really are able to kind of separate business from personal things. And you saw that with the way Poles received him and everything like that, at practice and all that kind of stuff. I don't know, it's really hard to explain, but when you're in the building, you're just kind of in this bubble and you're focused on what that week's game plan is, and going into those meetings and the installs and learning the defense and stuff like that. So to hear that he's engaged and to hear that he's in the meeting, and we're not just hearing that from Eberflus either, we're hearing that from his teammates, and that they're Justin Fields posted it because Roquan Smith was on the NFL's top 100. Justin Fields posted the graphic and stuff to his story. He's clearly still very much involved with his teammates, and so we're making a big to-do about this. But I feel inside the building, it's actually not as big of a deal. And he's just kind of trying to work through things, and it is business related. But at the same time, he's there for his guys. So that all kind of encourages me to think that things are going to work out. the only wild card here, obviously, is that he doesn't have representation, but he clearly has someone, which we knew, right? Like, I think we talked about it where I was like, I need to know who's in his ear. And I still need to know who this guy is, right? Like, who this person is. And I think the reason too that it's coming out, I was kind of thinking and talking through this with someone here in Tampa, where I was like, this person clearly isn't part of the club, because and it's not like Roquan didn't get permission to be to seek a trade, and the Bears clearly don't want to give him up, because I was talking about it like, if this was Jimmy Garoppolo, and this was a guy that like was an agent, like they would look the other way. Like there would be like, like even if he didn't have the permission that he does, like because the team didn't care if he was going to leave or not, leaves or not, like you're going to let this stuff go. But because this guy, whoever's doing the calls and stuff, like he's clearly not in the club. Like he's not part of the, like he doesn't know the decorum. He doesn't know kind of like how to do things. And he's definitely an outsider. So like in that way, like they're kind of making an example out of it. And I think it's really funny for the NFL to just come out with the memo and be like, hey, by the way, this is tampering. But at the same time, like and if he was in the club, he would know that all of this stuff was done in the back room of St. Elmo's in Indianapolis during the combine. So he clearly doesn't know.
Doesn't know it. Doesn't know what's going on. Yeah. When I got to, in a couple of weeks, when I have to start, in a couple of months, I should say, when I have to start representing myself and calling other companies, be like, hey, I got to at least use a fake voice or something. Try to throw people off the sense that I'm trying to be
a voice distorter.
Well, that's right. Like I'm calling on behalf of Adam Rank, and my client is whatever it is that needs to be done. I'll try to be a little bit more mindful, and I'm glad that Roquan and his representative are doing a pretty good job of exposing what not to do. Like
I want to know how he has these numbers. How does he have the numbers to these guys?
He's got the NFL Black Book. It just goes out there.
Yeah.
That little thing, the little NFL Black Book. I used to be in that back in I think I still might be listed in there, but who knows? In any event, want to let everybody know that if you are enjoying or want to ask some questions, first, real quick, just type in the word sick in the comments. Let us know that you're out there and you're watching and enjoying the show, or just watching. Enjoying it, it's another different. That's two different things. Like we're watching it. I'm not saying that I'm enjoying it, but we're watching it. We're here. Everybody wants to talk some Bears football.
Speak for yourself, Adam. They're definitely enjoying themselves.
I hope so. I hope so. They're enjoying Berlissimo in the comments, or somebody like that who's probably a little bit more entertaining. But whatever, I'm cool with it. Listen, you're in the house now. I don't care. I don't care who's entertaining you, whether you're watching the TV, whether it's Stephen Accounting who showed up and was sharing some anecdotes. I honestly don't care. But I'm just happy that everybody is here. And by the way, I just want to give everybody a quick reminder that if you're in the Chicago area, AM 1530 WCKG is the Chicago home of the Sick Podcast. Every Friday, 2:00 Central Time, the Sick Podcast will be available to you. And immediately after, 3 p.m. Central, the No Name Pod with Olin Kreutz and Jason McKee, a cover 2 of Bears coverage like you will not find anywhere else. So we appreciate everybody who's been listening to us when you're bumping around Chicago. Maybe you got to drive from Newark to Oswego. And as you're going to the drive-thru at Portillo's, you're like, oh, God, we could listen to the Sick Podcast right now. So we appreciate you doing that. But Carmen, what do you say? Let's get some questions in here. I know that we haven't talked about Tevin Jenkins. I'm sure there will be a Tevin Jenkins question or two. You are our offensive line person. So we're excited to talk. We're excited to talk about that. So Sammy, what do we got? You know what's funny is I was reading a book about the moon, and they're like, "Oh, this is for all mankind." My daughter's like, "What about womankind?" I'm like, "God, I love you." Such a good kid. Will Brisker win Defensive Rookie of the Year? Yeah, he's already won it. We've already decided that he's won it. Although I will tell you this, that the kid Aiden Hutchinson and his performance on Hard Knocks, that if he's just like an average player, he's gonna win because people love him now for the Billie Jean thing.
For the Billie Jean, I know.
But it's got to be realistic that Brisker could be the defensive Roy.
It's always interesting because I feel like it's a combination of who was a really high and visible pick versus also like who's on a team that's also very visible and is doing well, which those things are kind of like inversely related, right? Because if they were a high pick, that means that team wasn't very good. But I do think like between Aiden Hutchinson, I mean, like the first overall pick was Trayvon Walker too. Like we can't forget that. And if Jacksonville, Jacksonville's threshold for success is so low right now,
right,
that like if they even have like close to a 500 season, I feel like Trayvon Walker is going to be, and like we saw him in that first preseason game too. Like he's going to be very visible in that defense.
Very active, yeah.
So like it's going to be hard. But I would think that he gets like some votes, and especially like if he does have those gaudy stats, which it seems like he's making plays on the ball, and that's what Eberflus's defense's stress is, like swarming the ball, being around the ball, making sure you make plays on the ball. If he gets those interceptions, if he gets those pass breakups, like those are the very gaudy, again, visible stats that I feel like, that could get him on the map. And again, for as crucial, and this isn't something that's really widely probably going to be able to be known, but like how crucial that safety spot is in this defense, like a lot is going to hinge on how well Jaquan Brisker plays for this Bears defense. But I don't know if that's going to be very apparent on the national level, unfortunately.
Well, the good thing about Bears Twitter is that they will not let it go. And if Brisker is playing the level that we saw on Saturday, he is going to be trending every Sunday. And no disrespect to the Lions fans and our friends down in Duval County who have tremendous fans as well.
They do.
If Brisker is playing like he played on Saturday, like it'll be unstoppable. Like people will be talking about it. Another guy who was very interesting over the weekend was George Pickens. And anybody who listened to the show heading up to the draft, that was one of the players that we talked about an awful lot. And we had Berlissimo on, and we had some other people, and everybody loved George Pickens. And, there's a little bit of a disappointment that we didn't draft him. But if Brisker is as good as he has looked, and we hope that Kyler Gordon is good too, it makes not drafting Pickens salvageable.
Yeah, for sure.
But if Pickens comes out and dominates, and let's say that Christian Watson's not as good, I can't wait for that to happen. Because they'll be like, hey, Green Bay, what did you guys do? You had 3 chances to pick this guy. You passed on him, but then, Jordan Love's going to be your quarterback soon anyway, so you would just be wasting him. So it's fine. It's fine that you let him go. But Pickens, he was kind of good.
Yeah, he was. But, like, I feel like the combination, especially, like, you see Kyler Gordon, who has already kind of settled into that nickel spot in practice. Like, that is not an easy transition for a young player. And the fact that, like, I think that they were thinking, too, that they were going to need to bring him along a little bit more, keep him on that outside rotation and let him get used to the speed of the game. And then all of a sudden we're like, oh, God, like this guy's IQ is through the roof. His reflexes, his instincts, everything is there. The awareness is there. And so to have him already be kicked inside also means that he's a physical guy because it takes a lot to hold up as that slot corner. I like the combination of those two. I don't know how you're going to be able to argue with that. I truly believe that. And I've been such a fan of both of those picks, like from the very beginning, even though maybe a receiver like George Pickens would have been the more popular option. I think that Bears fans are going to be very happy with those two. And not fair. But even if George Pickens is good.
Yeah. And he's been good. He's good. Remember the first couple of games that Chase Claypool participated in was really good too and was outstanding. And then, we see him now. He's kind of like a mid-carder. So who knows? I don't want to get too caught up. But again, it's a similar situation to Jaquan Brisker in that he played so well in practice that when he went out and played so well in the game, it wasn't a surprise. Everything that we've heard about in practice with George Pickens has been solid, very good. Right. And it's fine. Pittsburgh can have a good guy. We can be happy with our 2 guys. Let's just make fun of the Packers for not drafting him. Sammy, do we have another question, though? Oh, my gosh. Yeah. Do you think Sanborn has a shot at starting at the Sam linebacker? Flus D usually moves him in and out quite a bit, so he could get limited starting NFL time. He's already moved up to second on the depth chart. Like I think he's running with the 2s, and I have the Bears official depth chart from their website, which is actually updated because they have Jack Sanborn right behind Nicholas Morrow. He is an ascending player, and it's not every pick and every player can just be a stud, but it is incredible how many of these guys, especially for the fact of not having a first round pick, how many of these 5th rounders and undrafted guys have started to make a name for themselves. I think Sanborn, I don't think that's a fluke. I think that there's things about him that are innate in nature, and you can't teach and you can't coach. And I just thought he played fantastic. What was your read?
Well, and I think that kind of legitimizes Ryan Poles' evaluation process, because you got this guy, who went undrafted, and he was a major contributor in the first preseason game. And he's also been making plays in practice too. Also that middle linebacker, there's a rotation there too. Don't get me wrong. You want guys that will stay on the field, but at the same time, you need to give them breaks and keep them fresh and all that other stuff. And so not only that, but you've also seen Sanborn on special teams, and that's a way that he can, make himself even more useful. And that's how you stick when you are one of those depth players. But I mean, this is a guy too that comes from a big time college program, went to Wisconsin. Yeah. He's not a stranger to the bright lights, and the fact that it wasn't too big for him too in the first preseason game. I think it was nice too that they got to kind of open up at home. He's familiar with the area, all that other stuff. It was just one of those things where I felt like that legitimized Ryan Poles' evaluation process essentially, and justified, because when he was flipping all of those picks too, I was just okay, I get that you want more volume, but are you prioritizing quantity over quality in that way? Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think this is a testament to the fact that no, even though obviously Sanborn wasn't one of the ones that was even drafted, but I was very encouraged by that, because if you can find those diamonds in the rough, which there are diamonds in the rough to be 100% had in those later rounds and in the undrafted class, then maybe we should trust what Ryan Poles is doing a little bit more.
Yeah, we should have a little bit more trust. And it's funny because whenever you look at, just watch the Hall of Fame ceremony, and a lot of the older players are hey, he was an 8th round draft pick. He was a 12th round draft pick. And people are always well, how is that possible? Back in the day, they went 12. I forget how many rounds they have. Maybe it might have even been as many as 15. But, and this from working with a team, is that once you get into the 5th round, which players are not going to be drafted, and those deals are already in place. And so the Bears obviously already had a deal in place to bring him in when he signed with the Bears. So these kind of things, these are not, it's not an accident that he was picked up, and he's not, and it's just something that Ryan Poles was able to go out to do. And again, if you combine this with some of the late round picks from last year that Ryan Pace was actually good at, you start to see some organizational depth. And that is one of the things that I think is going to be the most important for the Bears, is organizational depth. That when something happens to somebody and you need to go out there and you need to look around, what are we going to do here? Whenever there's a problem spot at a certain area, we've seen at the wide receiver position, Tajay Sharp is not a name that you're I can't believe we signed this guy, we're going to the Super Bowl. But he's a very good player when your depth chart is taking a little bit of a hit. And we saw that over the weekend. So to me, I think that's one of the keys of Ryan Poles. And so, you know what? I know it goes against the narrative where people are tough break for Poles. This whole thing with Roquan Smith shows that he's out of his depth. I'm are you not even watching?
Yeah.
Some of these players who are coming in here, it absolutely drives me crazy. All right, Sammy, what do we got? Sammy, tell Carmen. Oh, I will apartment babysit for her for free. Just to enjoy that Chicago. Yeah, you know what? That's an interesting point too. I was thinking about that. I'm oh, that poor apartment's been vacant for 2 weeks. Nobody's been able to, because
not 2 weeks. It's been a week. When I was on with you guys
3 weeks.
I had just gotten in. I had just gotten in. It's been 1 week. And if you're okay with leaving my my AC on eco mode so I can save some money while I'm out of town on my electricity, then yeah, go ahead. You can.
Oh yeah, you got to open the windows. Yeah. That is one of the
which
things.
I do have like my windows do open. It's a high rise, but my windows do open, which is really nice.
Ooh, that is a perk. I do. I have a house out in the desert as a small little humble brag. It you have the air conditioning, the highest that you can like. I have it set at 90. Like when it gets 90 in the house, it turns on, and I've noticed over the last couple of weeks it's kicked on a couple of nights. Like, oh, sick! It's 90 degrees in that house. In any event, sorry, Funk.
You won't get above 80 in mine.
Yeah, we're Funk Brinker. Thanks for the offer, but she's good. It's okay.
I'm good.
How about another one, Sammy? Do you think Roquan's issues might be playing Will versus Mike linebacker? He said in his trade with the statement that he wants to be a Bears great like Buckus, Iron Mike, Urlacher. I bet Briggs meta. Well, I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means either.
Casey, what does that mean? Is that a
better not knock against Lance Briggs?
It's not a. I think it's not a not. Casey's probably not trying to take a shot at Lance Briggs. I think he was saying that Lance Briggs would be upset that you can't be considered a Bears all-time great linebacker unless you play on the inside.
Unless you're always playing Mike or Strong or Sam, Mike or Sam, I suppose. No, yes. But the Will linebacker is something again in this defense that is so important. We don't know if because Roquan hasn't been at practice, you could still have the green dot responsibilities as the Will. And that's more important than where you're lined up between Mike, Will, and Sam. Like it's if you're calling the defense or you're the defensive signal caller. And so like as the Will, you're still in that middle level and he could very much still wear the green dot. And I would expect that he would end up wearing the green dot. And so that's way more important than which position you play between those three.
I think he wants to get paid. Like that's one of the things. That's where a lot of like position issues stem from is you want to get paid. Like, hey, I just want to get paid. And certain type of players get paid more money. And it's and it's understandable. It's kind of like, with Debo's situation where he was like, I don't want to run the football. And what I think he meant was like, I want to get paid extra for running the football. And we'll see. We'll see what happens this year.
Or I want to get paid like a wide receiver, seeing these wide receiver contracts. Like,
exactly.
That's a whole thing. And then also, I mean, like, there's really no difference either between like in a 4-3 defense between the middle linebacker and like the Will or the Sam, just because you're all considered inside linebackers. So when it comes to like Pro Bowl voting and like all of that other kind of outside stuff, like linebackers are considered linebackers. And so it's always the outside linebackers that have the gaudy sack stats and all that other stuff that end up getting into the Pro Bowl, which is infuriating for inside linebackers. And it was a fight that I fought for Levante David when I was with the Bucks to get his shine and his due. But it's hard. It's hard. Like he is one of the best off-ball linebackers in the league, but he doesn't have the tangible gaudy stats because that's not his role. And you're going up against like outside linebackers and defensive ends and for that matter. And like but at the same time, like, again, it doesn't matter where along that middle level you are, you're just kind of unfortunately overlooked in a lot of ways, period. I don't think that would prevent him from being considered a great linebacker for the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, he's definitely well on his way. And if he signs a second contract, which we're still anticipating that he's going to do, he's going to spend some significant time in Chicago and be well regarded. Like another number 58 who did eventually move on, Wilbur Marshall. He's going to be talked about as long as he stays with the team. And even if he does, I mean, we'll still remember him fondly, but as long as he stays with the team, he'll still be regarded as one of the greats, one of the great lineages of Bears linebackers, including Bill George, who you didn't even mention. And I only know that because I'm a stupid history nerd who studies that kind of stuff. I think there's one more guy I'm missing too, but it doesn't matter. We aren't missing your questions, I hope. Sammy, what do we got? Is it me or does it appear that Justin was holding the ball too long? I thought he was doing a pretty nice job of getting rid of it. What did you think, Carmen?
Well, and I think Luke Getsy came out right after the game and actually said that the only play he wasn't happy with was one where Justin didn't get through his reads and actually took off running. Like he didn't do his second read or didn't make his second read before he took off. So I think it might have been the opposite problem, that he was a little trigger happy from the pocket, which again, you wouldn't blame him just because that offensive line was still so much in flux. And I think that if he was holding the ball too long, I don't think it was so much him holding the ball too long as it was that offensive line just wasn't holding up. And which again, as they're evaluating these guys and you've got that rotation going, I mean, the fact that Tevin Jenkins was just kicked into guard 2 days ago and like has spent the last 2 days, like you're like, oh my God, they're still so far away from figuring out who is starting where on this offensive line. So I don't think that it was even Justin Fields holding the ball too long. I think it was that his offensive line wasn't holding up, because everything that Luke Getsy said would lead me to believe too that like he actually would have had Justin go through more of his progressions and would have wanted him to relax a little bit more in the pocket. But
it is one of those things that what they're trying to work on, more so than like who wins the game, who loses, things of that nature. It is, are you making your reads? Where was your first look? Where was your second look? Where did you go after that? What did you see? Did you notice this part? And so again, Michael Schofield got blown up by an all-pro. Like, that's disappointing. But also, you know what? I think that Ryan Poles was very clear, like, we're not messing around. Because Tevin Jenkins, who's still listed on the Bears depth chart, I'm looking at it right now, on the official team site, which I know gets, it's can be a little outdated, but I felt like they're doing they're still doing good. Yeah, it's still unofficial. They have Tevin Jenkins as the backup right tackle behind Riley Reif. They're kicking him inside to right guard, which again, I know you talked about this before, like, you don't mind if they're shuffling around that, but only if like that's where they stay. Like, pick a spot, pick what you're going to do, pick your major, and that's what you're going to focus on. And
at least pick the side. Like, if you want to try him out a guard, that's fine. But then, like, if you're going to try, it has to be between right tackle and right guard now. Like, stop with this whole, like, switching him back and forth, just because, like, that's not going to, like, no one is going to be able to show you in a couple of days that they're on, like, unless that's their natural position. And I think that, it's so much, we take it for granted that offensive linemen can switch sides, because it's really hard. It's so freaking hard.
It's Madden. It's the people who play Madden. Like, I'll just put him at left tackle. What's the big deal? Like, okay, that'll work. Also, remember, Lucas Patrick hasn't been playing. He's out with a thumb injury. So that also factors into it as well. And that's going to make a huge difference, a significant difference, when he's available and ready to play. Sammy, what do we got next? What grade would you give the O-line with Jenkins at guard? That's an interesting question. Oh man, it's tough to give them a high grade. I don't think it's an abysmal failure, but I think it's like incomplete, which I guess is a cop-out way of saying, like, I don't want to make a call right now.
No, but I think you're right though, just because like you haven't seen, there's not enough of a sample size to grade them out, like, with every single guy taking consistent snaps at one position all across the line. I honestly, like, I think I would prefer Jenkins at right tackle. Like, I don't think people realize as much that the further in you go, the more cerebral the game gets for the offensive line. So, like, tackles are the priority for tackles essentially is they prioritize your brute athletic ability, essentially, because you're setting the edge and you're going against like these really powerful guys that are bending and twisting and whatever. But on the inside, you're having to deal with all these stunts and all these different guys that are kind of coming in and out on the line, especially like, against certain teams that do it a lot more. And then you're also having to learn where your help is more. Because not only, like, with tackles, you've only got one guy on one side unless you got like an attached tight end, and that's a different story. But like, consistently, guards, you've got to worry about the guy on your right and the guy on your left, no matter what. And you have to know their assignments, and you have to know where your help is and where you can go and what you're responsible for. And that also depends, like, you don't know that necessarily in advance either, because that's why you get to the line, you hear the center call out the mic point, and that's where you set your protections. So it's like, it gets just way more cerebral as you go in. And like, obviously with center, you have to make those calls, you have to make those checks, you have to do all that kind of stuff. It varies with who you have behind you as your quarterback, of course. But like, as he's still like developing and we learn what kind of player he is, I think you start him at right tackle because and like his body type can hold up to that too. And I think that he's athletic enough to play that right tackle spot. It's just, the right guard kind of gives me a little bit more pause to see if he can think and react in real time, because that also requires that you just have this baseline of fundamentals that you don't have to think about, so that you can react to whatever it is that you're seeing or that your guys are seeing or whatever it is. So I could go on about offensive line all day, but that's my
I appreciate that. Is there any, and forgive me if this is a rudimentary observation, but could putting him at right guard, at least just for practice, like you said, as you get in more inside, it's more cerebral. Does it help his development then to try to think of different things, or are they harming him by not being like, just worry about this right now, get that squared? What do you think?
Well, while I say it gets more cerebral, also like your technique is different, your pad level is different, your hands are different. Just the way that you have to maneuver your body and the way that you have to set your leverage and all that kind of stuff, that is very different from guard to tackle. So in a way, like, it would be broadening his skill set, and like the more you can do, great. But if you're really trying to develop him and see what you have, I just think that like you would thrive in consistency and being able to practice things over, like getting the reps over and over and over again at one position, because they are drastically different. And that's, again, another misconception that I'm trying to make sure that people understand. Like, these positions are vastly different from one another. It's not, and I just think that, and this was why I gravitate to offensive line, because not only is each position so different, but then they are the only unit that has to also then work together. So you're like a collection of individuals that is only as strong as your weakest link, because you all have to work as one. And that doesn't exist anywhere else in football. That doesn't exist really anywhere else in sports. So like, it's such a fascinating thing. And that's why I nerd out over it, because it's such a contradiction to itself. But I think that you want to figure out where he is best, which I think is the stage that they're in now. Yeah. And then again, keep him there and give him a chance after an extended period of time, because that's the only way you're going to be able to truly evaluate him.
And it does look like he's going to get some extensive work at right guard against Seattle on Thursday night. And breaking news this evening, Drew Lock has COVID and will not play in the game versus the Bears. So it'll be interesting to see what we're going to see a lot of Geno Smith. I even forget who the third string guy is, but we'll see a lot of him. It'll be interesting, though. Again, this comes down, I think offensive line is probably the most important or the most looked at position. I think because after what we saw on Saturday, we're like, okay, these defensive guys can play. We'll figure this out. Like, it's okay. Now it's like, let's get this offensive line squared away. Even the receivers, you're like, okay, like I'm comfortable. And I know somebody tweeted this out before the show where they were like, hey, like, unless like some like great play, like somebody who's like like if Tyler Lockett was released, which he's not going to be, but like, hey, like, of course you would bring that player in or somebody like that. But it's like, I think the Bears are okay. I think it's going to be okay. I think it's going to be just fine. I think if Tajay Sharp works into a role, I was kind of encouraged watching Equanimeous St. Brown. So I'm like, okay, this feels good.
And
like,
Daz Newsome too. Daz Newsome made some really good plays.
Well, Daz Newsome also made some not so great plays.
I know. I think he was inconsistent, but
there was I was so excited to see him go out there and score the touchdown. That's something that he needed to get some confidence back into him, because there were some plays where you're like, damn it, dude. Like, everybody is rooting for you. Please start to pull it together. But we did see him get into the end zone with the football even. And so that was a pretty good. No, but I mean, like,
I think as like a rotational guy, like, I'm not saying he's your number 2 or whatever, but like, I think 100%. As a rotational guy, like, if you're not asking him to work that much as a rotational receiver, you're good. And you would think that you would when you get all the other guys back.
Yeah. That's all we want. We don't ask you to be a superstar. Just be good. That's when we need you to step up. That's all. Yeah. All right. Sammy, another question, please. With Kramer, that was bad. With a significant injury and Mustipher being Mustipher, is Cody Whitehair the backup center for this year? Again, I don't even know. I don't think that, no, because they still have Mustipher as the backup. I think Mustipher ends up still being the backup
For
once
sure.
Lucas.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, Cody Whitehair, too, is like your lock. He's been your lock on this
Yeah.
line. He's probably been the only lock except for Lucas Patrick, but then obviously you lose him to injury for a little while. You don't take Cody Whitehair away from what he does well to something that he might do okay. Like,
Yeah.
you're not like, you're going to keep him there because he can anchor that line from that guard spot as much as possible. And he's only going to help Mustafa or whoever it is that's at center. And like, Mustafa played center last year. I mean, like, I know it was to varying results, but like, he's got the experience and he's got to be like your bona fide backup center at this point. I mean, it was the Kramer thing. I was like, oh my God.
Oh,
What is going on with centers across the league? The Browns lost 2 of them.
Yes.
I was just, I'm like, I've been at Bucks camp and seeing how Robert Hainsey is doing after Jensen goes down. It's just like, you hate to see it, but I think that Mustafa is by far and away, like, you're not going to slot Cody Whitehair in when you know that he is so good in that guard spot.
Yeah, he plays well at left guard, and why would we even mess with that? There's no reason to move him around. By the way, the Steelers fans already turning on James Daniels. By the way, just throwing that out there for everybody. One of my friends texted me today. He's like, "Who is this guy?" I'm like, "Yeah, you know what? Like there was, I don't know. Our GM is a savant when it comes to offensive linemen, apparently. So I don't know. Good luck with
He was
all
an
that."
offensive lineman. What did I said that from the beginning? Have I not? Like, if you don't trust him,
you've been right on it the whole time, and seeing guys like Braxton Jones come out and play so well, it starts to lend some credence to like, yeah, maybe. And even, I don't know. So we'll see. And if they find something with Tevin Jenkins, remember Kyle Long got moved to guard at one point. Like he was drafted, he came out of Oregon as a tackle. He got moved to guard and was pretty good. And if that's Tevin Jenkins, like if we get a Kyle Long type production out of him, like, okay, that's good. I will certainly take that.
Fantastic.
That would be amazing. Sammy, what do we got? Oh, sorry, Burp. You can interrupt immediately. Cut me off. But isn't it easier for someone who has played tackle to move to guard rather than vice versa? Good question. What do you think, Carmen?
I think like that's the common notion, and there are I think in general, just because like you have the athletic ability at like tackle, and then you have the cerebral likeness at guard, but then you also do have more help at guard. So like that's why you see like a guy like Kyle Long who moves like from tackle to the inside, because like especially later in their career, because they essentially can't hold up in like the athletic spot, because they just can't be left alone necessarily as their bodies start to deteriorate essentially. And then you have that experience to move in, and you have the understanding of how the line works. But like, I mean, it's not easy to switch positions in general, but I do think that you can move inside because you are going to have more help, and the mental aspect is going to be a little bit harder. But you're not left on an island as much as tackles are or can be, because you're going to have help on either side of you. That's the trade-off, is like you have to know where your help is, but you also get help, whereas tackles don't have as much help, which is why you see those guys as the most athletic on the line. Essentially, you can hide a guy inside who's not as athletic but maybe has more going on, from the mental side.
Awesome. Thanks, Bert, for the question. Appreciate that. Sammy, what do we got next? Thursday night debut of Velus Jones Jr. Number 12 will be the rookie of the year. You know what? I love this kind of talk. I am very excited about it. Happy that he's been back out at camp or at practice this week. Everybody knows that I'm a huge fan of Velus Jones Jr. and hope that he's going to be able to come in and provide some spark to the offense. Now, I called him to his face the rookie of the year, but at the same time, if he comes in and contributes by being a YouTube type player who just makes big splash plays, I think that's good, because we have guys like David Montgomery, we've got Darnell Mooney, Cole Kmet. We need somebody who can come in there, keep defenses honest, and make those splash plays. I think Velus can do it. Carmen, what's your read on Velus Jones Jr.?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see what he can do in some game action. And I hope I don't want to rush him into anything and all that kind of stuff. So it'll be, I don't know, I'm going rookie of the year necessarily, just because like if he was brought in to be like the number one receiver, then I think that you have a chance. But again, like those rookie of the year awards are, the gaudier the stats and the more visible you are is rewarded. That's what those are essentially all about. So like I can't go that far necessarily just because I don't know that he'll get the play on a national level enough to be considered. And then plus, you're going against like some of like a George Pickens or whoever. Like, but I'm very excited to see how he can complement this receiving room and what he can do for, he's got the yards after the catchability and all that kind of stuff. So like I want to see what they can scheme up for him and how they can include him.
Yeah, that's the toughest thing is because everybody's ready to give it to George Pickens. Jameson Williams will be somebody that they're like, oh, like they're looking out for him. People did not regard Velus Jones Jr. highly when he came out of college. So he would have to have like one of the greatest rookie seasons of all time to even be in consideration for rookie of the year. And it's just the way it goes when you're a third round draft pick and people want to talk stuff about you because of your age or whatever. That's fine. If he comes out and performs well, Chicago will love him. And that's all we really need to be worried about right now is for Chicago to love him. All right. What do we got, Sammy? By the way, if you haven't done so already, you make sure you comment sick. If you're enjoying the show now that we've gotten rolling and you're now enjoying it. How do you feel about our D line? I saw them rock Mahomes more than once. Obviously the Chiefs drove down and they scored and that's fine. I thought that there were some players. Like I thought that Tunga played very well. Again, I think I thought they played again. It's not a lot of household names, but I thought overall they were pretty solid.
Yeah, I did too. And I mean, like I talked about it even before the preseason game where I thought this D-line could be even a bright spot for the Bears team in general, the defense especially obviously, but we saw some good things out of Dominique Robinson at the defensive end spot. So I both on that and special teams. So he's been someone that like the coaching staff has called intriguing. And then he goes, I think he got a sack in that game. And it's like, now you see why they were so intrigued. And I think that they were maybe even downplaying how much they liked him because there's no incentive in the preseason to like put everyone on notice that we like this rookie that came out of nowhere. And so I think that like maybe he might be the Bears' best kept secret, especially on the team line.
That is, again, not to hype up every draft pick that we made is like, this guy's an instant all-pro. But it is shocking how many of these guys went in and played well. And we would see this, over the last couple of years. We would always talk ourselves into certain players. And I remember there was a couple of guys every year. There was a kid who was from Redlands who went to UCLA, and I cannot think of his name right now. But in any of it, like talking him up, and then Kylie Pitts, and never seeing it translate, even though you were super excited about it. This was the exact opposite about like, my God, like these guys are just stepping up and they're making plays. And it's not, me wishing for this to happen, but we're actually seeing guys making great plays. So it's a nice change of pace from what we've seen over the last number of years, even though again, like Ryan Pace did a nice job with some of his later round picks. Sammy, what do we got? With Ebner popping off in that game, can we expect to see a full running back by committee this season? What do you think, Carmen?
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about this before too, where I think that that's kind of where the league is going and that a lot of teams have seen success in this like running back by committee type of approach just because, the tread wears down on these guys so quickly because they're taking hits and doing and they're expected to do so many things like the really successful every down backs, right? They're the ones that can run between the tackles, bounce outside, and catch passes. And like you got that in David Montgomery, but like you also don't want to put the entire load on him. And now you've got Khalil Herbert. And yes, Tristan Ebner, like he had a fantastic game. And so now like you can pick and choose when you play these guys. Even Ebner can even be like, I mean, he looks really good catching passes too. So like he can be that third down guy, that third down back. I'm trying to remember like if I saw or if I noticed, his kind of pass protection and blitz pickup abilities, because that's the big deal with especially that third down, back as well is like
that gets you on the field,
passes, but you also need to be able to aid in the protection of that quarterback. which is something that's hard for younger running backs. Like that's probably the biggest transition for these guys when they get into the league from college, because they're not asked to do it a whole lot in college. So I think that if he is solid in that aspect of the game, which I'll watch a little bit more, as the preseason wears on. But yeah, I mean, like, especially when you know that you have all these versatile guys in one running back room, and like the running game is what sets up the rest of your offense in so many ways. Like you're going to need to like pound that rock, to use the football term, over and over and over again, and to keep these guys fresh as much as possible. So I would absolutely deploy a running back by committee at this point.
Yeah. And I think that he, moved himself past Darrington Evans and players like that. And
Sure.
And again, I think that there's going to be an opportunity. And I will give you like a quick way to look at fantasy football when there will be a running back who breaks out this season. I'm not saying that it's going to be Ebner, because I wouldn't expect it with David Montgomery leading the way.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're looking at guys like Breece Hall and players like that, and you're trying to figure out like who's the rookie running back this season who breaks out, it is the pass protection. That if you can pass protect and you can catch the football, you're going to play on third downs, which means that they don't need to bring in Michael Carter as much or anything like that. So that is a huge key in development. It'll be a very big key for Ebner as well, if they can use him.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the easiest comparison, people will be like somebody like Tariq Cohen or something like that. But I think every player's different. So, but again, pass protection, huge for rookies to get on the field. And if they can master that, then they can get onto the field. Now, Carmen, we're gonna have to leave here in a second, mostly because I gotta go to Sportsnet. I gotta go now. Sammy, of course, is Canadian.
To catch a flight.
I gotta go. You gotta go catch a flight. I gotta go be on Sportnet. So if you are in Canada, make sure to tune in this evening. By the way, I'm pulling back the curtain to say that these segments are pre-taped. If they're pushing them as live, Sportsnet's lying to you. But in any event, Carmen, how can we follow you on the social media channels?
Twitter and Instagram is Carmi V. Look it up. Look,
there it is.
Oh, Sammy, you're just a pal. They're on Twitter and Instagram, and then all of my stuff comes out on the Draft Network as far as my articles and things like that. So I also now host a daily podcast called TDN Daily, and it is available wherever you get your podcasts. So please like, rate, and subscribe, because it would do me a real big solid if you did that.
Yes, please do that. And unfortunately, or fortunately, wait, what is this saying? Chubb, I'm not a big fan of the media, but I like Adam, and it's hard to hate, Carmen. Great show. Thank you. It's hard to hate. Hard to hate, Carmen. He's trying. Chubbs is trying, but he's like, I can't do it. I'm trying so desperately to not like you.
Add that to my Twitter bio. Hard to hate.
Hard to hate. Hard to hate. But in any event, thank you so much for being here for a great show. I thought I love your insights on the offensive line. It's the biggest key for this team moving forward. So we appreciate all of that. Want to let everybody know that we will be back with a podcast on Thursday. It'll drop at some point on Thursday evening, and of course the show WCKG AM 1530 in Chicago. We'll be on there Friday at 2 p.m. Central. And again, if you're in Canada, look for me tonight on Sportsnet. And until Thursday, bear down. Thanks, Carmen.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.